What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353. All right, everybody. Today's guest, in case you didn't know, he probably doesn't need an introduction because he is a very, very well-known instructor. Golf Digest Top 100, Golf Magazine Top 100, Golf Digest Top 50. He's got a very large following on social media. He is one of the leading TrackMan instructors on the planet. He's part of Revolution Golf and the Golf Channel Academy. And if you haven't figured it out yet, he is Andrew Rice, the Director of Instruction at the Westin Savannah Harbour. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time.
Pete, great to be with you, and looking forward to a little bit of banter.
All right, so a lot of people who are maybe new to the game or new to the podcast, and they're going to hear you, and they're not quite up to speed on their worldwide accents. Yours is not exactly South Carolina, is it? Well, it might be partly, but not totally.
Yes, I'm happy to have a partial South Carolinian accent. But I'm originally from South Africa, so according to my friends over in South Africa, I don't sound South African, and according to Americans over here, I don't sound American. So I'm somewhere stuck in between, but I think I've got a bit of a blend at the moment between a South African accent and a South Carolina accent. What you're going to do, it's a bit of a hybrid. I don't speak this way on purpose, and just so you know, I think I sound exactly like you, Pete. So there you have it. I know I don't, but it sounds to me in my brain like I sound like you.
You're from South Africa. It was a wonderful, beautiful place, and for anyone that hasn't been there, I highly recommend it. And you and your wife Terry have a golf trip there where you do. Well, I won't expand on it. I'll let you talk about it because you know exactly what you do.
Yeah, Pete, we have about 16 years ago, we came up with an idea to do a golf travel company. If And you know as well as I do, when you're in golf instruction, there's times of year where it's really busy and there's times of year where it's not so busy. And so we said, hey, what can we do during these softer periods during the year where it's not quite as busy? And so we said, let's do golf trips. And being from South Africa, that was the first choice naturally. And so every year, this 2020 is going to be our 15th trip that we've taken. We take golfers over to South Africa for 2 weeks, and we spend a week down in Cape Town. We really do a first-class job. We do it all out, charter planes and luxury five-star hotels. And we spend a week in Cape Town playing golf, going to wineries, eating amazing food, sightseeing. And then we do a week of safari. We get in the bush. We stay in complete world-class luxury. And it's really one of my favorite trips. We actually do 3 trips each year. We do a trip to South Africa in January. We go somewhere else in the Southern Hemisphere in February. And then Europe typically in September. We've got Portugal coming up in a couple of weeks. And really just a nice way to kind of break up teaching golf and get a little different taste and diversify a little bit of what we do. I think too often golf professionals tend to just stick to what they do. And what we found is that people who relate to us, people who come to us for golf advice and golf club advice and equipment advice and fitness advice, they also want holiday advice. And what better way to expose them to some great places all over the world is, hey, let's go here. I know this is fabulous. I know you're going to love it. And so that's really what we do.
Yeah, and Cape Town is so beautiful. To me, it was like, you fall asleep on this airplane for 12 hours and you wake up and you're in Eden. And the food is amazing. The people are amazing. And you could attest to it. The friends of mine that I stayed with said, and they had visited Hilton Head a number of times, and said one of the reasons that attracted them to the Low Country was that the people are so laid back, which reminded them a lot of being at home in Cape Town.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you can relate to that. But what was? There's a lot of change, obviously, in South Africa since the time you and I were young and now. So what was it like growing up there, and some of the differences between then and now?
It was simple times. South Africa certainly back then was behind the times. There was very little along the ways of the technology that we have today. There was certainly no internet. And so it was a case of, we didn't even have TV when I was a kid. I still remember when we got a TV, it was on from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And at 8 o'clock, you kind of went to bed because there was nothing else to do. And as a result, sports was very big, and just getting out and playing and going out and doing stuff was huge. And so as a result, I ended up playing all kinds of sports. I played cricket and rugby and soccer and tennis and squash and swimming and, of course, golf. I still remember the golf club that my parents belonged to. I would have to pay 20 cents to go out and play around a golf, which is kind of crazy nowadays, isn't it? Practicing, you had to have your own shag bag. We had a practice field, really, but there were no golf balls out there to hit. You had to hit your own, and so you'd hit them and go and pick them up, and hit them and pick them up, and then you'd go and play 18 and have a sandwich at the turn, and then you'd have a chipping contest. And as a result, there was a great group of kids who were there every day when they could possibly be there, and we really spurred each other along. And a couple of the guys have turned out to be quite good players. For sure. One of the guys has won a couple times on the European Tour, and we just immersed ourselves in the game because there was really nothing else for us to do. I distinctly remember thinking to myself as a little guy who loved the game that I hope I don't die, because if I die, I'm not going to be able to play golf. And I wish I still had that view of the game, but I don't anymore. But I'd like to, that's for sure. I know there are people out there today who do have that view on the game, and I certainly love golf. It's just not the primary reason I'm glad I'm alive.
No, you've got a lot of great things in your life and that occupy your time as they should. Um, Now, you worked hard, I'm sure, and you got a college scholarship, I believe, in the States, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. I came over in 1987, played golf at the University of Central Florida. It was some of the most fun golf I've played. I did well. I was a second team All American my final year. I was a two-time academic All American. Our team finished in the top 20 in the final NCAA Division One rankings in my last 2 years we were there. And we really had a nice team. It was a great group of guys, quite a few foreigners. Our coach wasn't able to pull some of the top players in America, and as a result, he had decided to look outside the country, and we just ended up with a nice group of guys who were really into playing, and it was a really, really enjoyable time in my golf career, just playing college golf with those guys.
Yeah, as a lot of people, it's you're playing golf, you're being fed, and you're being housed. It's like, okay, what else do you need?
Yeah,
Maybe a
yeah,
beer or
life is
two on the
good.
weekend.
Life is good.
So you were All American or second team All American. Did you? I'm sure you pursued fame and glory on PGA Tour.
But yeah, I chased the dream. That was kind of really not even a question. I chased the dream, but I must say, I never felt like I was going to be a successful golfer. I know for a fact I didn't work hard enough. I certainly wish I knew at that point what I know now. But I really didn't put in the work. I didn't put in the effort. But I chased the dream for 3 or 4 years. I played a little bit in South Africa. Went to tour school here. Played the mini tours in Florida. I remember playing the Tommy Armour Tour primarily, and went through a couple of different sponsors. Burned through a lot of money without enough success. I had some success, but certainly I did not have enough success. And so I turned to teaching. At the time, I was taking lessons from David Leadbetter, who was based in Orlando at the time. And I had met a lady, a fabulous young lady who is now my wife of 25 years. She worked for David as well in the management side. She wasn't a teacher, but she worked in the management side. And so we had moved in together, and we moved down to Naples because Terry had been asked to open up a David Leadbetter Academy down in Naples. And so we moved down to Naples, and I was still playing at the time, but playing less. And I started to get more and more into teaching, and eventually came to work for David Leadbetter, and worked for David for 5 or 6 years in the late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And really, here we are. But that's really where it started, working for David Leadbetter.
Was there a fascination with teaching that attracted you to it? Got you very interested, just captured your attention?
Pete, I would love to sound very romantic and say yes, there was, but at the end of the day, I just needed a job. I
Uh-huh.
just needed a more regular paycheck than what I was able to procure chasing the dream playing golf. And I knew that I had been around teachers a lot, and living with Terry and spending a lot of time at David Leadbetter's Golf Academy, both in Orlando and in Naples. I got to hang out with a bunch of teachers, and I felt like I knew what I was doing. I didn't really, but I felt like I did at that time. And so that's really that was kind of the natural selection for me, is to head off into teaching. It was a way where I could generate some revenue, fairly stable revenue, and grown from there. The key for me has been a combination of um, passion and energy. And I would say initially it was just the energy to go out there and provide for Terry and I, my wife, who she had just become my wife. And let's get this going. Let's get a job. Let's start generating some revenue, some income. And over the years, that energy level has increased and subsided, but over the last decade, I would say I've been more into my teaching than I ever have, just as I understand how little I actually do know, and that seems to motivate me.
So it
Is
sounded like
how
you were better balanced from the beginning as opposed to someone who's overly passionate and then gets in their own way.
Yeah, I was, like most of us in the golf business, and I know you got into the golf biz because you wanted to play. I
Hmm.
got into the golf biz because I wanted to play. Most people want to get into in the biz for playing reasons, and when you first start working in the golf business outside of playing, you're always thinking about playing. You're always trying to find a way to play better, and that for me was a little bit of it. But I really, I still remember the last shot I hit at on the South African tour on the 18th hole, and I said to my buddy, "That's it. I packed it in. I'm done." And he said, "No way." And I said, "Trust me, that's it." And so yeah, I really just wanted to generate an income, and that was a way that I saw that I could do that.
Well, being at that in and around the Leadbetter Academy back then, the late '80s, early '90s, I mean that was like the peak time. You had the two Nicks, Faldo and Price, and
Yeah,
Dennis
yeah.
Watson, who's he's fellow countryman, isn't he?
He was from Rhodesia. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but same area. Same time frame for
And
sure.
that had to be pretty exciting for you getting your start, and you're rubbing shoulders with basically some of the best players on the planet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really was. It was great, and I view Led as the godfather of golf instruction, really. He was the first guy to charge the big bucks. He was the first guy to gain notoriety in his help with both Nick Faldo and Nick Price. And he became the guy that everybody was going to see for help with their golf game. And he really didn't have a lot of competition at that time. He was the trailblazer, and so working for him at that time was a blessing that at the time I was not able to fully appreciate. But it was lucky, really, that I worked for the top guy in his peak, and it made it easy for me to branch out on my own and get a great job and work at a fantastic facility and move along, climb the ladder from there.
What was Ledbetter's biggest influence on you as an instructor?
I think, it's not I can't say that I'm teaching today what, the golf swing that David taught me back in, 1995 or 1987, whenever it was. I would say David taught me more how to teach, not so much what to teach, more how to teach. And you've got to make people feel like they're progressing. You've got to show people, hey, this is you 20 minutes ago, this is you right now. Look at the difference. You're really moving towards where we want to get you. You can do this. Now you can. And motivate people to understand that, hey, I can do this. It might feel strange, but I can do this. I've got to put some work in. Let's move ahead.
Right. And I think in today's world, it seems like every era kind of likes to look back on the last era and who the lead teachers were and then denounce them or knock their systems. And I think Ledbetter gets a
Yeah.
very, very bad rap by some in today's world,
I,
unfairly.
I would agree. I would agree. David knows. David knows more than David has forgotten more than I know. He really knows a tremendous amount, and the same goes for Butch Harmon and Jim McLean and Jim Suddy and all of those old teachers. They were fantastic. Most of them are fantastic to this day, and I think we tend to overlook that. It's not easy being a trailblazer. It's not easy being. I still remember in David's office, he had a whole wall from floor to ceiling full of videotapes, and each videotape was a different player, and there was all the swings that he could possibly collect from TV on a certain player. For example, he had a Hubert Green tape in there, and it was 30 to 45 minutes of Hubert Green hitting shots. And he wanted to understand how Hubert Green, with that golf swing, was able to be so good. And he started to come up with his own plan and his own philosophy, not different, but pulled from all of those great players over time. Because, one thing that young instructors have available to them nowadays, young and old really, is the internet. And I would say the internet has been amazing for me, not so much as far as marketing what I do, but learning about what I do. And that's done more for me than any book or any other person, I would say. It's just being able to pull from all these different coaches and all these different philosophies and say, well, that makes sense to me. That's what I'm going to go with.
Right. And it's interesting you bring up different coaches, because at that time, and I don't know if you guys worked together or crossed over, missed each other, but I mean, you had a lot of very, very good teachers come out of the Leadbetter Academy. There's you, Gary Gilchrist, Robert Baker. And so I guess one of the questions I have was, what was that environment like amongst the staff? So were you guys competitive against one another? Did you get together and just bounce ideas off each other? Can you describe what that culture was like and to work in and live in?
It really was great, Pete. Adam Schreiber is another coach that comes to mind. Simon Holmes, Dennis Pugh, Frankie Molinari's current coach. So many great coaches were all part of that same organization. And I wouldn't say we were competitive. It was always a case of bouncing ideas off one another. At least once every 2 weeks, we would have these things called a teach-in, where one instructor was selected previously and they came up with their own topic and they would have to do a presentation on something, and then everyone would try to shoot it down or debate it or just really have a good roundtable discussion about it. And it was highly, highly educational and so cool to be able to be around all those teachers. At the end of the day, I think if you're passionate about something for 3 or 4 or 5 decades and you stay fully invested in the game, you can't help but be a leader in the industry by the time you get to 3 decades in, 4 decades in. You can't help it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. One of the things I think the general public doesn't understand is, so here you are, you're working at Leadbetter, and Leadbetter's got this stable of pros, but your day is not working with those guys or guys trying to get to the tour level or college level, and they're trying to get to the pro level. Your day revolved a lot around teaching schools and the general public, didn't it?
Yes. And it still does. And that really is by choice. I still remember when I was finally given the go-ahead to go ahead and give my first lesson, because we had a fairly strict training protocol that as a Leadbetter instructor you would have to go through. And I still remember my first lesson I gave, and it was an hour-long lesson to just somebody who came in off the street and said, hey, I want a lesson. And it was, even back in those days, it was very expensive. It was $150. And I thought to myself, well, the best thing I can do for this golfer is tell them everything I know in 1 hour, because that would be good value. And I'd love to find the guy, and I would actually give him his $150 back, which he would have lost money on the change in value over the last 30 odd years. But just give him a couple of books and say, hey, come out for another free lesson. This one's on me. Just to try to make up for the debacle of what that first lesson was. And that's really, that's what I've learned over the years is I don't know everything. I know people much better. I know practice much better. I know the golf swing much better. And so how can I help this golfer by giving them something actionable, something they can use, whilst keeping it as simple as possible, reducing the information down to something that they can fully comprehend.
So would that be, because the next question was going to be, what did you learn or throughout your career most about working with everyday golfers that you might not have gotten from working with, let's say, PGA Tour pros?
Um, you know, Pete, one thing I've taught some good players over the years. I've taught some tour players over the years, but it's not something that I actively pursue. If a tour player comes to me tomorrow and says, "Hey, Andrew, I want to work with you. I'd love to have that opportunity," but I would draw some guidelines. I'm pretty hands off. I want to give the player, I find that if I can give the better player a satellite picture and say, okay, here's the big picture. We've looked at your stats. I've watched you play. I've watched you swing. Here's the big picture of what I feel like you need. Here are some tools to help you move in that direction. Okay, you go off, go and spend 2 months working on that, playing, doing what you do, and then let's get back together, and then we'll start to spend some more time together. But I'm not a fan of traveling and hitting the road and going to tour events and week in, week out. I like my house. I like my wife. I like my family. I like my bed. And so I prefer to stay home. And as a result, I have intentionally chosen to teach the large portion of the golf population and direct my information towards the large portion of the golf uh, public out there and say, how can I help these golfers who are trying to break 100, who are trying to break 90, who are trying to break 80? And those are the people who need the most help, and those are the people who I really try to help more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most of the people I talk to who have been at the tour level or had let's say a stable or a number of guys or girls, that's exactly why they got out of it. The travel wore them out. They said, look, it's nice to see different places and fly on G5s and all these other things, but there's a lot to be said about being at home around your family and your friends and sleeping in your own bed regularly.
For sure, for sure. The tour life is certainly not as glamorous as it might appear.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Um, so let's move on. So you go from you're in Naples and at the Leadbetter. So tell us how you go from there to Bluffton, South Carolina, when we met Berkeley Hall.
Okay, so Pete, from Naples, I moved to the Leadbetter Junior Academy, which was getting off the ground at the time. I remember when I first went there in the mid 90s, we had 4 students. I think at the highest point a couple of years ago, they perhaps had 180 students. So they had 4 students and 5 coaches. Can you imagine that?
Hmm.
When I first got there and when we got going, and it was there that I started being exposed to lots of different people, lots of different golfers, students, good young players, high handicap older players. And at the time, certain people started to say to me, "Hey, Andrew, I'd like to take a lesson from you. And where do you see yourself a couple of years down the road?" And so I got to meet 2 very important people from this area, the area that I live in Bluffton, South Carolina. And they were part of the development team for Berkeley Hall at the time. And they said, Andrew, where do you see yourself a couple of years from now? And even I, at that young age, started to catch on to, what that meant. And they invited me up to come up and see what Berkeley Hall was going to be all about. And it was beyond anything I'd ever seen at the time. And so I came up and, started working at Berkeley Hall once they opened up. And I was there for 15 years.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place, isn't it? I mean, you were there a lot longer than I was, but they did one heck of a job, and the vision that they had for that place was just amazing.
Oh, it was magic. When it came online, it was fantastic. It was one of a kind. It was a trailblazer. Certainly, when it came to the practice ground and the learning center and the short game area, it really was something super duper special.
Yeah, set the stage for one of your books that we'll get into here in a minute. Um, so you go from a world-renowned academy to now you're at a new private facility, and you're on your own. So what
Yeah.
were some of the challenges that you found, and then how did you overcome them?
Pete, I would say the biggest challenge was that there were not enough challenges early on. When you're a new instructor at the premier facility in an area that is really golf saturated, a lot of people come to you, no questions asked. And so as a result, I didn't have to work very hard to get people to come and see me.
Hmm.
It was almost like when I first got up here, I was pretty much the only guy in town, and everyone would come to see me, and the phone was ringing off the hook, and it was tough for people to get in. And when they struggled to get in, then they really booked a bunch of extra lessons whenever they could. And so life was easy. Life was easy for me. And that proved to be the biggest challenge. I grew complacent. I stopped uh, learning about the golf swing, about golf instruction, about people, about coaching, because everything was easy to me. Or so I thought. People coming and booking and teaching, and it was great.
Hmm.
Everything worked out easily. But when we got to quite a ways down the road, I started at Berkeley Hall in 2001. When we got to 2008 and the economy went south, that was when the magic happened for me. That was the best thing that really ever happened to my, I'm going to say, to my coaching career, was the economic downturn of 2008.
Is that when you got involved in the TrackMan and the whole university thing and their whole program?
Yeah, it was a little later, but that was really the catalyst for that to happen. Certainly 2001 and 9/11 happened, and that was a little blip. That was a slowdown. That was a little bit of a tough period, but recovered quite quickly, and life was good. From that time on, all the way to 2008. 40 to 50% of my revenue that year vanished. And so
Jeez.
I said to myself, I've either got to get all in or all out. And I came to the realization that I had not been all the way in. I was just kind of complacent and treading water. And I'm a big believer in stick with what you know. And I knew that I knew something about golf instruction, although not close to what I believe that I'm aware of at the moment. And so I decided to write a book. That was a great, challenging experience. Um, through the book, I started to gain some notoriety and just get some attention outside of my little sphere here in Bluffton, South Carolina. Because I wanted to market the book, so I created a website, and the website started to get some readership. In order to market the website and market the book, I started to get onto social media and YouTube, and started to film videos and just get myself out there. And it was a couple of years later where I was called up by the director of golf at a golf course up in the Hamptons up in New York called Rick Hartman. And Rick said, "Hey, Andrew, I've looked at your stuff, and we'd love to have you come up here and spend time with us in the summer, just as a seasonal instructor up here." And that was a fantastic experience. That's where I got exposed to TrackMan. The next year, I bought my own. That was eye-opening as far as golf coaching and being an instructor as to what really mattered when it came to hitting the golf ball well and hitting a golf ball better. And it was really from there, so the economy led to the book. The book led to a website, social media, that led to Atlantic Golf Club, which led to Revolution Golf, which led to TrackMan, which, it's just been kind of a cycle since then. But it really, the starting catalyst was the very, very challenging 2008 economic downturn.
And your first book is, just so everybody knows, it's all about impact, the 84 degree secret. That's the one you're talking about?
Correct. That's the one. And I at the time I was coaching a guy on the PGA Tour, and he had done quite well in the year. I just coached him for 1 year, and he happened to have his best year ever. And I stood on the range. He played in the second or third last group at Harbour Town. And I stood on the range on Sunday, and there were all these different players, and it was Jim Furyk and Boo Weekley and Aaron Badley, and Cliff Kresge was the guy I was coaching, and a couple other players. Anthony Kim, I think, was one of them. And I looked at all these swings, and I just looked down the range, and I thought, all of these golf balls sound the same and they all fly the same, yet everybody's golf swing looks different. How is that? How does that work? And I came up with the idea of, let's study the 25 best players of all time. So I created a list, 20 men, 5 ladies. The 25, I called them the 25 best players of all time, and let's study what they do. Let's look at what they do. And try to extract out what the similarities are. Okay, what the correlations are between all of these very different people, different golf swings. And so I looked at that, and I started to get some better ideas as to what mattered in the golf swing, what was all about style, and what was all about function. And I think that's very important for people to understand. You know, we would all love to have a golf swing that looks like Adam Scott. But if you look at Matthew Wolff's golf swing compared to that of Adam Scott, you're going to get 2 very different ideas. But ultimately, what matters in that golf swing? And so I started to get a much better idea as to what mattered in the golf swing, in addition to getting my name out there and getting people to read some of my information.
What was the 84%? Or
the
84 degrees. I can't
84 degree secret was, when you look at a golfer, when I looked at these 25 players from face on, okay, when they were hitting an iron, if you run a line from the outside of the back foot up the outside of the player's back leg, trail leg, that line is at 84 degrees. Okay, not much tilted away from vertical. But these players, as they wound up to the top, no part of their body other than their arms, none of their head, none of their hips or knees or thighs would break across that 84 degree secret. And everyone seemed to stay up against it as they got close to the top of the backswing, and then they would move from there into their front foot. But it was quite interesting to me to see how many players, regular average weekday golfers, would break that 84 degree line. And so I started to use that a lot in my teaching, and it really seemed to help people and get a better strike on the golf ball, compress the ball better.
In your studying, your research, did you ever find out, was it the lifestyle of an average golfer where they're probably sitting more, or was it something else that you struck upon that was a cause?
See,
for
there was no one thing. You know, there was no one thing, and I know you know this too. That hey, we're all different, and we all move, and our bodies are pieced together differently. Our joints are shaped differently, and so there was not really one thing. One person would slide their hips, and the next person would slide their head. Next person would turn their shoulders too flat, and so there was always something different. But as long as you had a little bit of a template upon which to base things off of, you could have a better chance of getting this player to hit some compressed, sizzling golf shots. And that's really what it was all about.
In your progression since you wrote that, so it's been basically a decade. Have your views on that changed, or has it remained the same?
I think it's remained the same. I would say it's a little bit more flexible. There's a little bit more leeway there. It's ultimately, as a coach, I look at it now as I've got to understand Matthew Wolff's golf swing. I've got to understand Eamon Darcy's golf swing. I've got to understand Kelvin Pete's golf swing, so that if I've got a young junior who comes to me and they go, boom, you know, they do all this weird, funky stuff, but the downswing is beautiful, and that ball just, you know, goes straight and far and straight and far, and it's on repeat, why mess with it? You know, it doesn't need to look a certain way. It needs to function a certain way. And I think that can that can really help a lot of golfers because not everyone can look like Adam Scott. You don't have to look like Adam Scott, but you can at your speed, you can get your golf swing to function pretty nicely without making it look beautiful or look perfect, look textbook.
Yeah, because I had probably seen as well as you, and most instructors out there that might be listening to this is when you try to fit somebody, because that's kind of the era we grew up in. That here's the model and you try to match it. That there
Yeah,
wasn't much
yeah, yeah,
individuality back then like there is now. But
for
if you
sure.
try to do something and it's contradictory to, let's say, how you can move for your, let's say you're born that way, you're going to hurt something eventually, or you're not going to
Yeah,
be able to perform that golf swing to your best ability.
correct.
Um,
Yeah. And you've got to, as a coach, I've got to take you, the unique individual standing in front of me, and say, this is your current golf swing. How can I help you to do better? And I think we've got to have really an in-depth knowledge of ball flight. We've got to have an in-depth knowledge of physiology. We've got to have knowledge of the person, maybe not in depth, but we've got to have knowledge of the person, their ability to practice, their ability to get out and play. And then we go, okay, we're going to make this combined effort of we're going to put all of this in the pot, mix it up, and say, okay, this is the best way for you, the unique individual, to get better, to start moving ahead, to start playing better golf, ultimately to start having more fun.
yeah, I mean that's the whole point of why someone comes to see instructors or coaches, right?
It should be.
That's the
It
job
should
description.
be. Yeah.
So let's go fast forward a little while after that, and you do the Wedge Project, which was, I think, a 3-year study, right? You spent a
Yeah.
lot of time on
Yeah.
that. So if writing one book wasn't enough, what the hell possessed you to go ahead and write another one?
Well, after writing the first book, I said, okay, I'm done with that now. I'm done with that. So, Wedge Project is a video. Okay, it's a downloadable digital product. It's available on my website. I did it after about 4 or 5 years of using TrackMan and really trying to understand wedge play. And I would say that to this day, that came out, I think, in 2014. To this day, there's really not a lot that I would change. The information that I have at the moment is certainly broader than what is presented in the Wedge Project, but man, there is some cool information in there pertaining to spin rates and launch and friction and angle of attack and just basic technique. And that really has been a fun one, Pete, in that so many people have come to me and said, I got that, and it has really turned my wedge game around. It is amazing how much better I am. I can hit that shot, and I never was able to hit that shot before, and that's been a fun one.
Mm-hmm. How much does your wedge information differ from James Ridyard, who's got some notoriety from working
Oh,
with Molinari?
I don't think very much. I would say James is most probably the premier short game wedge coach on the planet at the moment. He has done tremendously well. He started getting into wedge information and wedge numbers and wedge technique at around the same time as I did. He has taken that ball and ran with it, and he continues to run with it and continues to put out fantastic information and help golfers um, all over the planet of all abilities. Whereas, I really looked into it and I said, okay, done that. Let's get to coaching golfers.
Mm-hmm.
And not that he doesn't do that, but he's continued to research and strive to understand the right information, and he's really doing fantastic things.
Yeah, he does a lot of good stuff. But for everyone listening, you can get Andrew's Wedge Project. You can get his book all about impact, and he has another off-season project all on his website. www.andrewricegolf.com. So be sure to everybody to check those out if you want to get your game better. Let's move on. Let's talk some more about TrackMan, because you are a TrackMan Master. You're one of, I think you're still one of, what, 9 university partners in the world, unless that's changed. I think last time we had
Pete,
to sit down and talk, you were
checked.
way up there.
I haven't checked in the last couple of years, but I know this. I am very, very comfortable on TrackMan. I am quite happy presenting to any demographic on the planet pertaining to TrackMan. I will debate anybody when it comes to TrackMan information. It's a fantastic tool that tells us how the golf club caused the golf ball to fly a certain way. And as a golf coach, that's important to me, because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get the golf club to communicate the intended message to the back of the golf ball. And so that tells me where something might be off. And then we go to the video, and I look at the video and I say, okay, this is how this player is causing their golf club to communicate the wrong message to the golf ball. And so it's a great diagnostic tool for any coach. And I love using it. I pretty much use it in almost every lesson, and it's really there for me. I look at a golf swing now, and I feel like, having used it for pretty close to a decade now, having used TrackMan for a decade, I can look at a golf swing, and not that I see the numbers, but I can come pretty close to telling you, okay, the club path on that golf swing is as follows. The dynamic loft's going to be about here. The club speed's going to be there. The club path, so on and so forth. And but it's taught me a tremendous amount. It's opened my eyes to what's important, and how the club communicates with the golf ball. That's the important part. How the player causes the club to communicate to the golf ball. That's really where the coaching art and coaching magic comes in.
What do you say to some of the detractors of that? Let's say they're holding on to the old way of doing things, so to speak, and they're against technology like this.
I had a lady golf coach. I was doing some seminars for the Australian PGA over in Australia last year, and she came to me, and she was vehemently against TrackMan, and I simply said to her, I said, did you ride your horse to this seminar today? And she said, what do you mean? I said, did you ride your horse? She said, I don't have a horse. I said, how did you get here? She said, I came by car. I said, there you have it. Okay, it's called advancement. Doctors used X-rays initially, then they moved up to MRIs. Video is the X-ray, TrackMan is the MRI. It's not quite that technologically advanced. I'm not alluding to that. But it's advancement when it comes to golf instruction. Why would you not want that? You're only against technology if you don't understand it and you are stubbornly rooted in your old ways.
Let me ask you, because you are one of the world experts on TrackMan. So, and I don't remember how long ago it was, but you and I discussed a little bit about D-plane and some other things, and mostly we were talking about search for the perfect swing. It's was it Hobbs? I can't never remember that. Get him Cochran and Hobbs.
Cochran and Stobbs.
Stobbs, that's it.
Yeah.
So how did those guys? Because they seem to have a lot of that information back then, but I would have to imagine that long ago it was very time-consuming or very difficult to gather the machinery to do that. And TrackMan seems to make it much more accessible on a
for
daily
sure.
basis.
Mathematics, those guys were geniuses. Mathematics, they used algorithms and formulas to calculate how the golf ball should fly when a club is introduced a certain way. And that was 1969. They were way ahead of their time.
Mm-hmm.
TrackMan, it's this little box you can put down. It's an expensive little box, but you plop it down behind the player, hits the shot, and you look at it and you say, okay, this is what the club did to that ball to make it go that way. It's so much easier, but that's why it's expensive, I suppose.
Have they gone into phones and apps and things like that? Because I used to be, my brother, you know him a long time as well, and
Yeah.
he's had one forever, and I used to get with him and play with his and learn about it. But now that he's not doing as much with it, and I'm not around him as much. Are they progressing into phones and apps on phones and things like that to make it in your pocket?
No, we're not there yet. We're not. TrackMan's latest thing is they're in every baseball stadium in America, every minor league, major league stadium. If you go to a baseball stadium, you see those home runs being dinged out of there, and you see the track of the ball and the ball speed and how far it carries and pitching, the spin rates and the arc and the sink, and that's all TrackMan generated now. And so, they're not really. That wouldn't. I don't believe it would behoove TrackMan to come up with some kind of little pocket app that everyone can have for $500. I'm sure they would like to do that, but I've found that smart people like to be right, and these engineers and scientists who built and designed TrackMan, they want their information to be as close to correct as possible. And if they've got to make it smaller and simpler and less costly, they're going to give up some of that accuracy. And I don't think they're prepared to do that.
Yeah, they
At
just
least not at this
presented
point.
at the Microsoft Technological
Yes.
Conference, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They did.
Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. I mean, you're getting in that level. Your stuff works. I mean, it's been through the people trying to poke holes in it, and
Yeah.
I think where it gets a bad rap is complacency among some of the people who use it. Meaning that let's take instructors for example. They might not be. Well, let's call it lazy. That they're lazy and that they don't want to go learn.
Lazy golf instructors, Pete? Come on, that can't be real, eh?
Right. Their desire to continue their education, the real education on really what works and what doesn't, is let's say it's subpar, to use a golf term.
It's compromise, yes.
And then, but they'll have access to a TrackMan, but they really don't know what the numbers mean, or they might have an introductory level, and then they're passing this information off as they use the term science because people who know what they're talking about might say this is scientific. But then there's more people like that than someone like you who knows what the hell you're talking about. You've gone to all the classes, you've been educated extremely well on it, but it's that majority that just ruins it for the rest. And I think that's where things like TrackMan have gotten. Any negativity towards them have come from that.
I would agree. I would agree. It's people. Ultimately, TrackMan gets a bad rap from people who don't understand it fully, from people who don't use it on a daily basis. And to me, TrackMan is this amazing feel machine that I can put behind the player who's quite comfortable with it, actually even a player who's not comfortable with it, and say, hey, you see this number that's -3? Let's get this number to +2. Okay, hit some shots. There you go. That's +2. Can you feel what +2 feels like? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of amazing. I love that ball flight. Okay, well, that's the feel I want you to take with you. Okay, give me some more +2s. Oh, that's a +3. That'll work. That's just fine. Okay, can you feel what you need to feel? They're not going to go out there and go, well, what's the difference between -1 and +2? They're going, this is my feel.
Right.
And so they take that feel with them. And TrackMan is a fantastic feel machine. I was actually hitting balls on it today going, I need to increase the amount of loft. I tend to de-loft the club too much coming into the golf ball. I need to increase the amount of loft. And so I was working on that. And I left after hitting 20 shots with a great feel, a great sense of what I need to do to increase that loft 2 or 3 degrees to hit my ball a little higher so it can stop on a green.
You know what? One thing I see that is today's younger instructors or those coming up that they're so tech driven and they're coming into the industry where they have this available to them. Where you or I, we didn't have anything like that. And you had to learn swing. Whether the theory was right or wrong, you still had to study swing. Like you said, Leadbetter had a whole wall full of tapes.
Yeah.
And you had that you have to be passionate or at least have a deep interest in something to sit down and go through tape after tape after tape.
Correct.
And I think that without that some people are lacking. Now, I could be wrong, and I'm sure I am, because human beings adapt, and the next level of great teachers is going to adapt by using TrackMan and adapt in how they can use that more effectively and better.
For sure, no doubt. Whether it be fittings, whether it be on the golf course, whether it be practicing, whether it be games, whether it be coaching, or just like we use it most of the time for swinging the club and golf lessons. Its reach is yet to be fully tapped. I think we're in the middle of the third inning when it comes to technology. If we look at golf instruction as a baseball game, we're in the middle of the third inning. We've got a long ways to go.
I would say that similar to you had to go through a criteria, almost a checklist, before you were allowed to give an individual lesson when you were at Leadbetter. If I had an academy, if the world was perfect and I had a giant academy and a bunch of instructors under me, what I would do is I would make the younger instructors learn to teach without it, and then once they got to a certain level, then they could teach with it. Just so they had the fundamentals of understanding, looking at a swing and understanding it before they used it as a crutch, because I think that's what a lot of young instructors are doing.
Yeah.
They're not using it the way it was supposed to be.
I would actually do it the other way around, Pete. I would make them teach without video and use TrackMan, because ultimately they'll learn. They've got to change the numbers in order to change the ball flight. And when someone comes to you for a lesson, most often when an 18 handicapper comes to you for a lesson, they're looking to change their ball flight. And so if you can go, okay, well, I got to learn how to change these numbers. And when you learn to change the numbers, then you start to move the needle and people start to get better. And then I would say, okay, here, I'm going to give you the gift of video now so that you can slow it down and get better at helping people change their numbers.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I would agree. I wouldn't argue with that at all.
And I suppose you could certainly do it either way. You could do it either way. There's no right or wrong way. I would just, in hindsight, I wish from day one when I first started teaching, I wish I had TrackMan. I would have messed it up royally initially, but after the first year, I would have really started to understand what's important. And I think when young teachers rely on video or their eye, or worse yet, their eye, to see what a player is doing wrong, they chase a look. Too often they chase a look and they go, well, we got to set up this way and we've got to aim this way. The backswing's got to be like this. If I look at Matthew Wolff and I look at Raymond Floyd and I look at, all these different players, they didn't really have that look, but their golf ball kind of went the way they wanted to. I just want my golf ball to go the way I want it to, said the golfer to the coach.
How does, so you, some of the people listening, you might have young instructors out there or younger kids that want to become an instructor, and they're listening and they're hearing about TrackMan, and they see you kind of at the top of this mountain, and they can't decipher, okay, well, Andrew, I'll never be there. But if a young kid or a young professional or teacher had the desire to be, was listening and wanted to become a TrackMan Master or a University Partner, what would be the steps? So what would be the first step that they would take on that journey?
Peter, I would say this: understand there will always be new mountains. Okay, the TrackMan. If not that I'm saying I'm top of the TrackMan mountain, but if there's a TrackMan mountain, there's a 3D mountain. If there's a 3D mountain, there's a coaching, training mountain. Pick your mountain and get out in front of it. I went to the very first TrackMan University that they ever put on, and I remember looking around the room, and there must have been 30 or 40 coaches there, and I thought to myself, this is a race. This is a contest between me and every person who's in this room today, because this TrackMan thing is pretty new, and it's going to be a big thing down the road. And lo and behold, it proved to be exactly that. And I went out of my way early on to get my information out, talk about, learn about this technology ahead of all the other people who were in that room. Not that I beat every one of them, but I was one of the first few to kind of get out in front. And that helps tremendously. That helps tremendously. So find your mountain, find something that interests you. There's a guy I used to give internet lessons to by the name of a young Irish player, good player, by the name of Robbie Cannon. And Robbie has transitioned from playing to golf fitness. And Robbie Cannon coaches Shane Lowry. And so now Robbie Cannon is one of the top guys on the golf physical fitness training mountain. And how cool is that?
Yeah,
So
that's pretty cool.
decide where you want to go with it, whether you want to be a James Richards short game guy, or you want to be a David Orr putting guy, or a Robbie Cannon fitness guy, or somebody in the 3D world, ground pressure. There's so many different areas. Decide where you want to specialize and go all out as hard as you can, day in and day out. Talk to people, ask questions, use the technology, make mistakes with the technology, use it, learn it, and you'll find yourself ahead of the crowd. You'll find yourself riding the wave.
Yeah, I would agree. Everything today seems to be you have to specialize in order to. You can't just be run of the mill anymore in anything.
Yeah,
I think you got to be
yeah.
something to set you apart.
And that's a little bit of what my current challenge is, Pete. When it comes to kind of the business of what I do, is I, I I believe that what I do is a little too broad. In that I really try to present myself as a coach for the everyday golfer. I help golfers of all abilities have more fun on the golf course.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a little bit broad. And I want to try to whittle it down to where, I want people to know, hey, I'm the everyday golfer's coach. That's who I want to be. I don't want to be the TrackMan guy. I don't want to be the wedge guy. I want to be the person who helps everyday golfers. I can speak their language. That's who I coach day in and day out, whether it's 3-day golf schools or one-on-one hourly lessons. That's 95% of my business. And so I want to narrow my niche so that people know, hey, I coach the everyday golfer.
In doing that, do you do more private lessons? Do you do more half day or multi-day schools? What is kind of the bread and butter of your instruction?
Peter, it depends what time of year. January, February is pretty much trips with some one-on-one instruction.
Mm-hmm.
March, April, May is almost full-on 3-day golf schools. It's the spring. It's people getting ready for their season. They're dusting off the clubs. They're getting out of the cold. They can't wait to go and play some golf. And then June, July, August, I'll do travel and I'll do 1-day schools and 1-day clinics at different clubs throughout the country. That's been a good success the last few years. September becomes once again a bit of a travel month because we take people to Europe, different countries throughout Europe each year. And then October, November is back to golf schools and one-on-one instruction. And December is a little bit more one-on-one instruction. As we get closer to the holidays, people are less likely to travel. And so I'll teach my local people, my college players, my young professionals at that time of the year, because most of them have got a break in their schedules. And then we start the cycle over again. So it's nice, certainly for me. I like different views. I like different opportunities. And as a result, I don't stay really for more than 3 months. I'm not doing the same thing, you know?
Yeah, the variety, the change keeps you going. I mean, it makes a different twist. You might be instructing and coaching, but the different environments obviously keep it
Yeah,
new for you, which has got to be all. I mean, you got it down exceptionally
really is.
well.
It's fun.
As all of us get to points in life where we think we got the answers, what was it about teaching that, let's say 20 years ago, you were 100% sure that you knew about, but now you look back and say, oh, geez, that was not, I don't, no, that wasn't me, you know?
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I said to him, I said, do you remember when you first got into coaching, how you'd have these moments, these periods in time where you felt like, I've got this. There's really nothing else I can learn about the golf swing and golf coaching. I've pretty much got this. And he chuckled and said, yes, I remember that. And I said, the funny thing is I haven't thought that for about 20 years now. And we both agreed that that's a good thing. As you get wiser, as you get further down the road, you realize it's not possible to come close to knowing everything. And so, and that's the beauty of the internet nowadays. You can tap into these experts in their different fields. And you can use some of their information. And that's part of why we put on this coaching seminar called Coach Camp, where we really strive to bring in some of the top coaches in their fields from all over the world. And we spend almost 3 days together in Savannah, first week in December, and just try to, selfishly, I'm the one who gets to pick the presenters and the guest speakers and all of that. And so I go, well, who do I really want to learn from?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, okay, I'll take that. I'll take some of that. I know I need to get better with that, so let's bring them in. And, that's available to us now. So, it's, yeah, as you get older, you realize you know less.
Yeah, to explain to everybody listening a little bit more about Coaches Camp, because you've had some pretty big names in the golf industry present, and I was looking at your website earlier about this year's, because last year I couldn't do it because I was traveling too much. But this year I plan on coming, and you've got some pretty big names again. So I'll let you, it's your Coach Camp. I'm not going to try to explain it and I can as well as you can.
And Pete, really, what it is it's a coaching seminar for young golf professionals. Well, I shouldn't say young, for golf professionals and for coaches to come and spend 3 days with like-minded individuals listening to some of the best in the world. And it's been, Sean Foley and Cameron McCormick and Joseph Mayo and Jeff Smith and Sasha McKenzie and Dr. Paul Wood, James Siekman. We've had really some incredible presenters that I know I've learned a tremendous amount from. Chuck Cook is another one. And really, like I said, it's I invite the people that I really feel like I can learn from and use their information to apply to my day in and day out coaching to help me do a better job with my customers. And this year is no different. We've got Dr. Brett McCabe, who's motivational mind guy, I would say. We've got the guys from Game Like Training who are going to help us with coaching systems and how can we recreate real life, real on-course type environments in our practice sessions.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Dr. Sasha McKenzie, who I would say is the premier golf biomechanist on the planet. He's going to help us understand, and Sasha's really gotten very, very good at helping normal intellect people, like most golf instructors are, non-scientists, understand what he's talking about and understand some of the concepts that he studies and researches. We've got Dr. Paul Wood and Dr. Eric Hendrickson from the chief engineers with Ping coming out to help us understand some of their concepts and just it's a great learning environment for anyone who's really willing to go in depth. If you want to learn from some great people, Dana Dahlquist is a feature presenter, tremendous swing guru from the West Coast. And then we've got the guy who helps Brooks Koepka with his short game and his putting. I would say he was pretty much first on the list once we started to see how Brooks was doing. But
Right.
happy to have Jeff Pierce coming out. So it really is going to be a great show. I'm tremendously excited. And now we've just got to set it up and choreograph everything so that we can create environments where we're going to stress these coaches, we're going to stress these presenters so that we can really learn what they do in coaching environments, in a variety of different coaching environments.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to this year's. Like, I meant to do it in the past, and it's always been something. But this year, I've already earmarked it. You said it's the first week of December, always, isn't it?
December. It's always the first week of December, correct? Yeah. This year it's December 3, 4, 5, Tuesday, Wednesday,
and
Thursday.
I'll have that up in the show notes and so forth for anybody that's interested, and I'll link that to your website so they can
Great.
get
Thanks,
the full
Pete.
score. That we're going to run a little short on time. Let me just grab a couple more questions for you, and then we'll get into some rapid fire if that's okay with you.
You got it.
What's the best advice you ever got?
The best advice I've ever got. That's a good question, Pete. The best, do the right thing. Do the right thing.
Yeah, it's a pretty good thing to live by.
Yeah, do the right thing. I think if you treat people the way you would like to be treated, if you try to help people the way you would like to be helped, if you've got a choice between leaving something out or honestly putting it in there, if you ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? You're going to be in a good place. You're going to sleep well.
Mm-hmm. What do you hear some other instructors, be they contemporaries or just someone you might see on social media, doing that just makes you cringe?
I cringe when I see other golf instructors providing content to their followers that intentionally blow up another coach's content. In other words, Coach A says, no, you've got to grip the club this way. Coach B says, everyone says you've got to grip the club this way, but that is wrong because this is how you've got to grip the club. I would much rather prefer Coach B to say, you might see some opposing views, but this is how I like people to grip the club.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that. I don't think anyone looks better by making somebody else look worse.
Yeah, I think you see that with some of the younger instructors, right? You get to a point when you get
Yeah.
older and you've been maybe something like we said that each of us thought was we were 100% right on, and when we get older, like, oh no, that don't remind me of that. You know, you get to an age you've gone through it, and the young guys haven't gone, or the young girls even haven't gone through it yet, and it's a harsh lesson to learn. I think all of us have.
Everybody's got something of value to contribute,
Mm-hmm.
and to shoot others down, I think, is a mistake. It doesn't make you better, smarter. It doesn't do anything good for anyone, really.
Yeah, I agree. Now, with all the success you've had, how do you stay motivated and how do you stay humble?
Pete, humble. I certainly don't have all the answers. I give a bad golf lesson every week. As much as I don't, well, I'm certainly not trying to. I have a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn on a lot of topics. How do I stay motivated? I have a lot to learn. And I think both of those go hand in hand, really, in keeping me motivated, and keeping me humble. Those are two great qualities for any coach to have. I certainly don't know all the answers. I do make mistakes. Just ask my wife on a too frequent basis. Um, but I can assure you this: I'm trying. Um, when I come home, I'm trying to find ways to get better. I'm watching videos. I'm conversing with experts in various fields, and I'm doing what I can to get better.
That's all we can do, right? I mean, that's all anybody can expect. You do what you
That,
can.
that's I think so. I think so. Am I passionate about what I do? I would have to say yes.
Well, I've been around you long
And
enough that yeah, that there's no doubt about it.
yeah, the coaches come and coaches go, but the successful ones don't go. They stick around and they want to learn. I mentioned the name Chuck Cook earlier, and Chuck is an elder statesman of coaching, tremendously successful, has coached a number of major championship winners, and I really look up to Chuck because he is an older coach who certainly got into coaching before technology, but Chuck knows as much about technology as I do, as any young person does, and he understands TrackMan and pressure plates and 3D, and he really gets the deal because he wants to stay current, he wants to stay informed,
Hmm.
and that's a good role model for any young coach to look up to.
Yeah, I would agree. What do you do to unwind or decompress? I mean, you're at a place where most people go to do that at a golf course.
Yeah.
Do you still have your Mustang convertible? Is that you get out
No,
and
I saw as soon as my sons, my wife and I have two boys. They're 20 and 18, and as soon as they got to an age where they started to say, "Hey, Dad, can I take the Mustang tonight?" That's when I was like, "No, we got to get rid of that thing. That thing's trouble. It's too fast and too unsafe. No airbags and these little lap belts for seat belts." I said that thing's out of here. So we got rid of that, but. Pete, my wife and I, we love to travel, hey, and so we'll get away with friends and go and spend some time in Florida, or we just got back from a couple of days up in New York City.
hmm
I've got two hobbies. My number one hobby at the moment is photography. And so I'm doing my best to learn how to take great photos and learn about the technology and processing and so on and so forth. And my other hobby is wine. I really enjoy wine, and my wife and I like food and wine and how they go together. And so, always trying to learn about that. But that ties in nicely with our love of travel. And so, invariably, when we take a group to some far off exotic destination, it's going to involve great food, really good wine experiences, golf, and it's all wrapped under this shell of you know let's go travel. Let's go and see new places.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's next for you? I mean, you got another book? Are you going to come up with an invention, a TV show? I mean, inquiring minds want to know. Give
Pete,
us a
yeah,
look into.
I don't know. It's not gonna be another book. I don't think I'll ever do another book. Just in that, I think much like newspapers, I think books are slowly but surely going by the wayside. It's so much easier to get a digital product to somebody. There's no shipping. And I know some people like to get their hands on a book. There'll always be that available to you. But if I do put anything out, it'll be a digital product. It'll invariably be a video where it's much easier to explain via the use of pictures and images, demonstration. It'll be something along those lines. The thing that's piquing my interest at the moment is practice and how to practice. How can we as golfers, as coaches, start to help people get the most out of their very limited very valuable practice time. Life gets in the way. It's a fast-paced world that we live in, and so people don't have the ability to practice that they used to have. Once again, we owe this all to technology, but we're connected, and people want us, people need us, businesses want and need us. And so as a result, it all ends up being less time to go and practice golf, really. And so how can people make the most of their practice time, and how can, through research, not my research, just the understanding of smart people's research, scientific research, how can I help golfers, help people do a better job with that little sliver of time so
Yeah,
that they can start to play better?
we got to get together later on, a couple weeks or months or whenever you got a downtime. I've been looking into that for quite some time, and periodization of training, and did a lot of research on in the weightlifting world. Not that I'm a weightlifter, but how they utilize that for like the Olympics and World Championships, and peaking at the
Yeah.
right time, when to take off, and all that. And we'll have to do it over a bottle of wine or two.
Yeah, it's a
Since I
big thing, you know.
I like drinking it,
Um,
and you know about it, so that's a good combination. That could be a dangerous
yeah,
combination.
it's a good combo. I like it. But you know, I think one of the great marvels of sport is if we look at the Rio Olympics and you look at the performance of the British Olympic team and what they did at those Olympics, that is unbelievable for that small uh, group of countries to perform at that level. I think they ended up with the second most medals behind the United States. And you look at that, and then you start to go, okay, what were their philosophies? What were their how did they manage to do that? And they dug deep. They got into sleep patterns, and it's big into periodization and training. And what are you doing? I think there's a lot there that we don't understand yet.
Yeah, oh yeah, I agree, 100%. I got to get you going. A few quick question, rapid fire things.
Sure, you got it, Pete.
If you weren't a golf coach or instructor, you'd be a what?
I'd be a photographer.
Goes right in line with your hobby. No,
Yes.
not a professional, not a professional wine taster.
I do that in my spare time. I'd be a
uh,
wine maker. I'd like to make wine.
you old fashioned. You gonna stomp the grapes, or you just
No,
modernization of it?
I'm gonna get someone else to do that. But I'm gonna pick the vineyard sites and the grapes and all of that.
Not a bad thing. Let's see. Favorite golf course that, and you have to have played it. You can't just pick one
The best golf course in the world, according to me, is Shinnecock Hills, and it ain't even close.
now that ain't even close is interesting.
Yeah, Shinnecock Hills is the best golf course, and here's why. You can have an 18 handicapper, a 12 handicapper, a 6 handicapper, and a scratch. The four of you can walk the golf course. You can play it in under 4 hours. There's no hole that anybody in the foursome cannot par. There's no bunker that anybody in the group cannot extract themselves out of.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody can have a good day and shoot below their handicap.
Yep, I would say that those are some
And
good criteria that everyone can enjoy.
and then a month later, one over par can win the U.S. Open there.
Very versatile.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's see, caddy or cart?
Caddy all day.
The best part of your day is what?
My wife and I like to run or walk each morning, and some days we got to get up early, and some days we don't. But I would say that that 30 minutes that we get to spend together each morning.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's see, bucket list courses, and you can pick three.
St. Andrews, Sand Hills, and Dornoch.
So two UK courses.
Yeah, for sure.
No
And
Augusta.
and
Or have
And
you played there?
I've been blessed to play Augusta quite a number of times. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, but two UK courses, but all three of them the same UK style, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love links golf. I love links golf.
If you could win any golf tournament in the world, whether it was a small
The
hometown,
Open Championship.
geez, don't wait until I finish it. It's not Jeopardy.
That's easy. You said any golf tournament. There you go. I've got that.
A couple more. Who's the GOAT, Tiger or Jack?
Jack. Sorry, Tiger fans. Sorry,
It's been
Jack.
about, I asked that to every guest, it's been about split 50-50 so far.
Really? Okay.
If you could change one rule in golf, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, there would be so many. There would be so many. This nutty thing with the pin. Get the pin out. Leave the pin just like you had it. It was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And
then
then this
like
thing
that
from dropping from your knee. What's up with that? Dropping from your knee. How does that improve the game?
I don't know how that speeds up play.
Yeah.
Your favorite curse word if you miss a shot?
Jeez.
If you got kids and they listen, you don't have to say the word. You just hint towards what it is.
Yeah. I think you've got to quietly go with a little what the F. What the F was that?
And last rapid fire, who would be in your dream foursome?
I would have my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I would have Seve Ballesteros, and I would have Arnold Palmer.
That'd be a pretty cool pairing. Hey, I've known you a long time. I'm extremely happy. I've almost had a front row seat, and that we probably live 5 miles from each other, and watched a lot of the things you explained today. Watch your progression, and very, very happy for you and your family and your success, and it's very well earned. If someone wanted to reach out to you for a lesson or your books, lecture, TrackMan seminar, what's the best way to reach you? Your website, phone number, or any other thing you want to get
Pete,
out?
firstly, thank you so much for that encouragement. That's awesome to hear. I love hearing that from one of my peers. I sincerely appreciate that. And if someone wanted to reach out, my website is andrewricegolf.com. If you look on Google at Andrew Rice Golf, you're going to find me. It's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, Andrew Rice Golf. You can find me at any of those places. Shoot me a note. We'll get together and just, would love to. I love golf, and my objective is to help you, the golfer, play better golf. Better golf. Have more fun.
That's the thing. That's the best thing a coach can do. You got to run. Let's catch up soon. We as close as we live together, we don't do it hardly enough. Say hi to your wife for me, and as always, thanks for taking the time, buddy.
Peter, it was great. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Have a wonderful day.
Cheers.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and/or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say.